The wind screamed across the Wyoming plains like a living thing, hungry and relentless, turning the December afternoon into a white fury that erased the world. Catherine Morrison stood on the platform of the Laramie station, her Boston wool coat already crusted with ice, and watched the mail coach driver shake his head for the third time. "No, ma'am," he said, his weathered face set hard as granite. "I ain't taking nobody to Copper Ridge in this. Storm's getting worse, not better. You'd best find a hotel and wait it out." Kate pulled her coat tighter, though it did nothing against the cold that was already stealing into her bones. In her reticule she had 47 cents. Not enough for a hotel, not enough for anything except the hope that had brought her 2,000 miles from Boston to this frozen edge of civilization. "Please," she said, and hated the tremor in her voice. "Mr. Brennan is expecting me. He sent the train fare. He'll be worried if I don't arrive." The driver spat tobacco juice onto the snow-covered boards. "Then Mr. Brennan can come fetch you himself when the storm passes. I got a wife and young'uns, and I aim to see them again. This conversation's over." He climbed onto the coach seat, snapped the reins, and the horses lurched forward, leaving Kate standing alone as the wind picked up driving snow into her face like tiny knives. The station master had already gone inside the yellow lamplight in his window, warm and unreachable. The last westbound train had departed. The town of Laramie stretched before her, a collection of dark buildings hunched against the storm, and Kate had 47 cents and nowhere to go. For a moment, just a moment, she allowed herself to feel the full weight of it. The factory in Boston that had closed its doors 3 months ago, putting 200 workers into the street. Her mother's letter, written in that careful hand that disguised desperation, explaining that the landlady had given them 10 days to pay 6 months back rent or vacate. The photograph of Mr. Cornelius Ashworth, 62 years old, widowed, looking for a capable woman to manage his household. Her mother's quiet plea. "We have no choice, Catherine. He's willing to overlook our circumstances." Kate had looked at that photograph, at those cold eyes that assessed her like livestock at auction, and made a different choice. She'd taken her mother's silver mirror, the cameo brooch that had belonged to her grandmother, and 3 books from her father's library. She'd sold them all at the pawnbrokers on Tremont Street and bought a newspaper. In the back pages, among advertisements for patent medicines and farmland, she'd found the listings. Men seeking wives, women seeking husbands. A frontier market in loneliness and practical need. Isaac Brennan, 35, blacksmith and rancher, Copper Ridge, Wyoming. Seeking capable woman for marriage. Must be willing to work hard. No drinkers, no gamblers. References required. Photograph appreciated, but not required. She'd written that night sitting at her mother's kitchen table by candlelight because they could no longer afford lamp oil. She'd been honest in a way that felt like stripping naked. 28 years old. Factory worker bookkeeper for her floor supervisor. Father deceased, gambled away their savings trying to recover from the panic of 73. Mother unwell. No prospects in Boston. Willing to work. Strong constitution. Plain but respectable. She'd included no photograph, partly because she had none suitable, and partly because she suspected her plainness might work against her. Isaac's reply had come 3 weeks later. The letter was brief, almost curt. He had a daughter 8 years old. His wife had died 8 years past. He needed someone to help with the house, the child, the ranch. He would send train fare if she was still willing. Marriage would be a business arrangement, not a romance. Did she understand? Kate had understood perfectly. She'd written back the same day. Now she stood in a Wyoming blizzard with 47 cents, watching her last connection to Isaac Brennan disappear into the white wall of snow, and understood something else. She was going to die here if she didn't move. The town was only 100 yards away. Kate picked up her carpetbag, lowered her head against the wind, and started walking. The snow was already 6 inches deep and getting deeper. Each step required effort, her skirts dragging her boots slipping on ice beneath the fresh powder. The cold was a physical thing now pressing against her chest, burning her lungs with each breath. Her fingers, even in gloves, had gone numb. Her face felt frozen. She made it 50 yards before she realized she couldn't see the town anymore. The storm had swallowed it, turned the world into a featureless white void. Kate stopped, panic rising in her throat. She turned in a circle, searching for any landmark, any sign of direction. Nothing, just wind and snow, and the terrible certainty that she'd made a fatal mistake. Keep moving. The thought cut through the panic with the clarity of survival instinct. Stop and you'll freeze. Keep moving. But which direction? Kate stood paralyzed by indecision, her breath coming in short gasps that sent white plumes into the wind. Her carpetbag suddenly felt impossibly heavy. Inside it were all her remaining possessions: 2 dresses, 1 good, undergarments. Her father's book of Robert Browning poems, the only one she couldn't bear to sell. A daguerreotype of her parents on their wedding day, young and hopeful, before the world broke them. She would die here, and no one would find her until spring. Then she heard it. Faint at first, almost lost in the howl of wind. The sound of bells, sleigh bells, rhythmic and steady, growing louder. Kate's heart lurched. She opened her mouth to call out, but the wind stole her voice. She stumbled forward toward the sound, her feet clumsy with cold. "Stop!" The voice cut through the storm mail in commanding. "Stop right there. You're heading the wrong way." Kate froze. The bells were closer now, and through the curtain of snow she could make out a shape. A horse dark against the white. A sleigh behind it. A man standing in the sleigh bed, one hand gripping the reins, the other cupped around his mouth. "Follow my voice," he shouted. "Turn to your left and walk straight toward me. Slowly, there's a gully 10 feet in front of you." Kate turned, her legs shaking, and walked. Each step felt like it might be her last, the ground uncertain beneath her feet. The shape resolved into details. A draft horse, massive and patient, steam rising from its flanks. A simple utility sleigh, the kind used for hauling supplies. A man bundled in a heavy coat and wide-brimmed hat, a wool scarf wrapped around the lower half of his face. She reached the sleigh, and her knees gave out. The man was beside her in an instant, strong hands catching her before she hit the ground. He lifted her effortlessly, depositing her into the sleigh bed onto a pile of buffalo robes. His movements were quick and efficient, betraying no panic, just practiced competence. "Can you hear me?" he asked, unwrapping the scarf enough to speak clearly. His voice was deep with a western flatness that shaped vowels differently than Boston. Kate nodded, her teeth chattering too hard to speak. "I'm going to wrap you in these robes. You're hypothermic. Don't fight me." He proceeded to bundle her in layers of heavy fur, tucking the robes around her with the care of someone wrapping something precious. Kate let him, too cold and exhausted to resist. When he was satisfied, he retrieved her carpetbag from where she'd dropped it, placed it at her feet, and climbed onto the driver's seat. "You're Catherine Morrison?" he asked, not looking back at her. Kate's heart, which had been racing with cold and fear, skipped a different kind of beat. "Yes," she managed. "Are you Mr. Brennan?" "I am." He snapped the reins, and the horse started forward, moving with the steady confidence of an animal that knew its way home even in blindness. "I expected you on the mail coach. When Daniels came through town without stopping, I figured either you weren't on the train or you'd been left at the station. Storm came up faster than anyone thought." "The driver refused to bring me," Kate said. Her voice was steadier now, though her whole body still shook. "He said it was too dangerous." "He was right." Isaac's tone was matter-of-fact. "You should have stayed at the station hotel." Kate felt a flash of irritation cut through her cold, dulled senses. "I didn't have money for a hotel." That made him pause. He half-turned on the seat, and for the first time, Kate could see his eyes above the scarf. Blue, startlingly blue, even in the gray light of the storm. They studied her for a long moment. "I sent train fare," he said, "and extra for meals and lodging if needed." "The train fare was exact to the penny," Kate replied, "and I used the meal money for meals. 6 days from Boston. I arrived with 47 cents. Another pause. Then Isaac turned back to the road, if it could be called that. Kate could see nothing but white, but the horse plodded on without hesitation. "Most women would have lied," Isaac said finally. "Claimed the money went to something respectable, emergency dressmaking or some such." "I'm not most women, Mr. Brennan, and I'm not a liar." "Good." He said it simply, as though the matter was settled. "We'll need honesty between us if this is going to work." They rode in silence after that, the only sounds, the hiss of runners on snow, the steady clip of hooves, and the relentless wind. Kate watched the back of Isaac's head, what she could see of him beneath hat and scarf. Broad shoulders, capable hands on the reins. He sat easy in the seat, unbothered by the cold that was slowly releasing its grip on Kate beneath the buffalo robes. She tried to match this man to the brief letters they'd exchanged. The handwriting had been clear but unpracticed, the words chosen carefully as though he weighed each one before committing it to paper. He'd told her almost nothing personal. His wife's name had been Margaret. She'd died in childbirth. His daughter's name was Anna. The ranch was small but productive. He was not a rich man, but he was not destitute. He needed help, not charity, and would provide the same in return. Now watching him navigate a blizzard with the calm of someone checking fence posts on a sunny afternoon, Kate wondered what else his letters hadn't told her. Who was Isaac Brennan really? What kind of man advertised for a wife like ordering supplies from a catalog? What kind of woman answered such an advertisement? The storm began to ease after what felt like hours, but was probably only 40 minutes. The wind dropped from a shriek to a moan, and the snow thinned enough that Kate could make out shapes through the white. Hills dark with pine. A fence line posts like sentinels marking the boundary of something. Then emerging from the storm, like a ship from fog, a cabin. It was small, built of logs, chinked with what looked like clay, with a stone chimney from which smoke rose in a thin gray line. A barn stood nearby, larger than the house. Corrals extended beyond that, empty, now but sturdy. Everything spoke of careful maintenance, of someone who took pride in what they built. Isaac guided the sleigh to the barn, and before Kate could struggle free of the buffalo robes, he was beside her again, lifting her down. Her legs buckled when her feet hit the ground, muscles cramped from cold and stillness. "Easy," Isaac set his arm around her waist, supporting her weight as though it was nothing. "You need to warm up slow. Too fast and it'll hurt worse." He half carried her to the cabin door, pushed it open, and the warmth that rolled out was like a physical embrace. Kate gasped at the sensation, her frozen skin prickling painfully as blood began to flow properly again. The interior was a single large room with a sleeping loft visible above. A stone fireplace dominated one wall, fire crackling cheerfully. A cast-iron stove squatted in the corner, radiating heat. The furnishings were simple but well-made. A table with 4 chairs, a rocking chair near the fireplace, braided rugs on the wooden floor. Everything was clean, almost obsessively so, but there was a masculine austerity to it. No curtains on the windows, no decorative items, just function and utility. And standing in the corner, half hidden in shadow, a small figure watching them with enormous, dark eyes. Isaac set Kate on her feet, but kept one hand on her elbow, steadying her. "Anna," he said gently, "this is Miss Morrison, the lady I told you about." The child didn't speak. She was small for 8, Kate thought. Or perhaps she just seemed that way because of how she held herself pressed back against the wall, as though trying to disappear into it. Dark hair in braids, a simple calico dress, bare feet despite the cold. Her face was solemn, unsmiling, but it was her eyes that caught Kate's attention. They were watching, measuring, judging in a way that seemed far too adult for a child. Kate tried to smile, though her face was still numb. "Hello, Anna. I'm pleased to meet you." No response, not even a nod. Isaac sighed, a sound that carried weight. "Anna doesn't talk much," he said. "She will when she's ready. For now, she listens well and helps where she can." He guided Kate to the rocking chair near the fire. "Sit. I need to see to the horse and get your bag. Anna, fetch the kettle. Miss Morrison needs hot tea." The child moved then, quick and silent, as a shadow, taking the kettle from the stove and carrying it with both hands to pour water into a tin cup on the table. She added tea leaves from a jar. Her movements, practiced and precise, then brought the cup to Kate, set it on the floor beside the chair, and retreated to her corner without meeting Kate's eyes. Isaac was already at the door. "Don't try to take off those wet clothes yourself," he said. "You'll make yourself sick fumbling with cold fingers. I'll send Anna to help you when I come back." Then he was gone, the door closing behind him, leaving Kate alone with the silent child and the growing realization that she had traveled 2,000 miles to live with strangers in a cabin at the end of the world. The tea was strong and bitter, and the most wonderful thing Kate had ever tasted. She wrapped her hands around the cup, feeling warmth seep back into her fingers, and looked around the cabin with new eyes. Now that the immediate crisis of survival had passed, she could see details. A shelf of books near the table, spine-worn and well-read. A child sampler on the wall, stitching neat but unfinished, the words reading, "Bless this home," but stopping at the H. A door on the far wall closed, leading presumably to a bedroom. Anna hadn't moved from her corner. She stood perfectly still, watching Kate with those unsettling dark eyes. Kate studied her in return. The child's dress was clean but faded from many washings. Her hair was neatly braided but needed cutting, the ends ragged. Her feet were bare, and Kate noticed that she kept shifting her weight, as though the floor was cold. "You should put on shoes," Kate said gently. "Your feet must be freezing." Anna's gaze flickered to a pair of small boots by the door, then back to Kate. She didn't move. "I won't be offended if you want to be comfortable in your own home," Kate continued. "Please, Anna, put them on for me. I'd feel terrible knowing you were cold." For a long moment the child didn't respond. Then, moving with the same silent efficiency she'd shown earlier, she crossed to the boots, slipped them on without sitting down, and returned to her corner, still watching, still silent. Kate tried again. "Your father tells me you're 8 years old. That's a good age. Old enough to be helpful, but young enough to still have fun. Do you go to school?" "Nothing." "I suppose the school might be far away. When I was your age in Boston, I walked a mile each way to the schoolhouse. My feet would be so cold by the time I arrived that I couldn't feel my toes. The teacher, Miss Abernathy, would make us all stand by the stove for 10 minutes before lessons started." Anna's expression didn't change, but Kate thought she saw a flicker of something in those dark eyes. Interest, maybe? Or calculation? The door opened, and Isaac returned carrying Kate's carpetbag and bringing a gust of cold air with him. He'd removed the scarf, and Kate got her first clear look at his face. Strong-jawed, weathered by sun and wind. A nose that had been broken at least once. Thin lips pressed into a habitual line as though smiling was an expression he'd forgotten. But those blue eyes were striking, intelligent, taking in the scene with one sweep. "Anna," he said, "help Miss Morrison to the bedroom. She needs to change into dry clothes." The child moved immediately, crossing to Kate and standing expectantly. Kate rose, her legs still unsteady, and followed Anna to the closed door. The bedroom was small, barely large enough for the double bed that dominated it. A dresser stood against one wall, a trunk at the foot of the bed. The bed itself was made with military precision, blankets tucked tight, a quilt folded at the foot. Anna set Kate's carpetbag on the bed and then, to Kate's surprise, began efficiently helping her out of the wet coat. Her small fingers were nimble with the buttons, and she worked without hesitation, as though she'd done this before. Helped her father out of wet clothes, perhaps, on cold nights when he came in from the barn. The thought made Kate's eyes burn. This child, silent and solemn, playing house with a grief-stricken father, trying to be the woman of the house when she should be playing with dolls. "Thank you," Kate said softly, as Anna hung the coat on a peg by the door. "You're very helpful." Anna's eyes met hers for just a moment, and Kate saw something there that made her chest ache. Not hostility, not quite wariness. Something closer to desperate hope, quickly hidden. Then the child slipped out of the room, closing the door behind her with a soft click, leaving Kate alone to change into dry clothes with trembling hands and a heart full of questions she didn't yet know how to ask. When Kate emerged from the bedroom 20 minutes later, dressed in her second-best dress, and with her hair unpinned and drying by the fire Isaac had clearly stoked, she found the cabin transformed. The table was set for 3 with plain white plates and simple utensils. A pot on the stove sent up steam that carried the smell of stew rich with meat and vegetables. Isaac stood at the counter, slicing bread with the competence of someone who'd been doing it for years. Anna sat at the table, hands folded, waiting. "Sit," Isaac said, not looking up from his task. "Food's ready." Kate took the chair across from Anna, who immediately looked down at her empty plate. Isaac brought the bread to the table, then ladled stew into each bowl. The portions were generous, the stew thick with chunks of venison, potato, carrot, and onion. Kate's stomach reminded her sharply that she'd eaten nothing since a stale biscuit at the train station in Omaha. Isaac sat, and Kate expected grace, but he simply picked up his spoon and began eating. Anna did the same. After a moment of uncertainty, Kate followed suit. The stew was good. Better than good. The meat was tender, the vegetables cooked perfectly, the broth seasoned with salt and herbs that Kate couldn't quite identify. She ate quickly, too hungry for manners, and when her bowl was empty, Isaac refilled it without asking. They ate in silence. The only sounds were spoons against bowls, the crackle of the fire, the wind still moaning around the cabin eaves. Kate watched Isaac covertly between bites. His hands were large, scarred from work, the knuckles permanently enlarged from years of gripping hammer and tongs. He ate efficiently, methodically, the way he seemed to do everything. No wasted motion. When the meal was finished, Anna cleared the table without being asked, carrying dishes to a basin by the stove. Isaac poured coffee for himself and Kate strong and black from a pot that had been keeping warm. "We need to talk," he said, wrapping both hands around his cup. "Clear the air about expectations." Kate nodded, her stomach suddenly tight despite the food. Isaac studied her over the rim of his cup. "I told you in my letters that this would be a business arrangement. I meant that. I'm not looking for romance, Miss Morrison. I'm looking for help. Someone to manage the house, help with Anna, assist with the ranch work when needed. In return, I'll provide shelter, food, protection, and my name in marriage when the circuit preacher comes through in spring." "I understand," Kate said. "Do you—" Isaac's blue eyes were direct, almost challenging. "Because most women who answer advertisements like mine come with expectations. They read dime novels and think frontier life is some kind of adventure. They imagine cowboys and dances and courtship. That's not what this is." Kate set down her coffee cup with deliberate care. "Mr. Brennan, I worked 12-hour days in a textile factory from the time I was 14 years old. I kept books for 200 workers while standing at a loom because we weren't allowed chairs. When the factory closed, I watched women with children go hungry because there were no jobs and no prospects. My mother is living on charity from neighbors who can't afford it. I came here because I needed work and safety and a future, not romance. If you're expecting me to swoon over the frontier, you're going to be very disappointed." Something flickered in Isaac's expression. Not quite a smile, but close. "Fair enough. Can you cook?" Kate hesitated, then chose honesty. "No, not well. I can boil eggs and make toast. In Boston, I ate at the factory canteen or bought meat pies from the street vendors." "Can you sew?" "Basic mending, nothing fancy." "Milk a cow, churn butter, tend a garden." "No, no, and no." Kate lifted her chin. "But I can learn. I'm not afraid of hard work, and I'm not stupid." Isaac leaned back in his chair, studying her. "What can you do?" "I can keep books. I managed accounts for my floor supervisor at the factory. I know double-entry bookkeeping, can calculate interest and depreciation, and I can spot discrepancies in ledgers. I can read and write, obviously. I can do arithmetic in my head faster than most people can do it on paper." Kate paused. "I realize those skills aren't particularly useful on a ranch." "You'd be surprised." Isaac stood crossed to a shelf and returned with a leather-bound ledger. He dropped it on the table in front of Kate with a heavy thump. 3 years of ranch accounts. I'm terrible at it. Can never make the numbers come out right. Every spring I spend a week trying to figure out what I owe and what I'm owed, and I still get it wrong." Kate opened the ledger, and her practiced eye immediately caught the problem. The handwriting was neat enough, but the organization was chaotic. Income and expenses mixed together with no clear separation, no running totals. Dates out of sequence. She flipped forward, scanning pages, her fingers automatically calculating. "You're being overcharged for feed grain," she said after a moment. "Someone's adding 2% to each invoice, and you paid the same blacksmith bill twice in October." Isaac's eyebrows rose. "How can you tell that from just looking? The handwriting on the October entries is identical, including the ink smudges in the same places. And the feed grain prices are inconsistent with market rates. See here, in March you paid 42 cents per 100 pounds. In June, 48 cents. But June is after spring planting, when prices should drop, not rise." She looked up to find both Isaac and Anna staring at her. Anna's dark eyes were wide, and Isaac's expression had shifted into something Kate couldn't quite read. "Miss Morrison," Isaac said slowly, "how would you like to spend the next 2 weeks reorganizing my accounts? I'll teach you to cook and handle the house. You teach me to keep proper books. If at the end of that time we both think this arrangement can work, we'll proceed. If not, I'll pay for your return to Boston with enough extra for a month's lodging." Kate's heart, which had been hammering with nerves, steadied into a different rhythm. Hope. Careful, cautious hope. "That seems fair." "Good." Isaac took the ledger back, set it aside. "You'll sleep in the bedroom. Anna and I will take the loft. Tomorrow we'll start going through the household routine. For now you should rest. You've had a hard day." It wasn't until Kate was alone in the bedroom, lying in the too-large bed, that still smelled faintly of cedar and something else, something masculine and unfamiliar, that the reality of her situation truly hit her. She was in a cabin in Wyoming, miles from the nearest town, with a man she'd met only hours ago and his silent watching child. Everything she owned fit in one carpetbag. She had 47 cents to her name and no way to leave, even if she wanted to. She couldn't cook, couldn't manage a household the way a frontier wife needed to, and she'd just promised to try anyway. Kate stared at the ceiling, watching firelight from the main room flicker through the gap under the door, and listened to the wind howl around the cabin. Somewhere in the darkness above, Isaac and Anna were settling into the loft. She heard the creak of boards, the rustle of blankets, a low murmur that might have been Isaac saying goodnight to his daughter. She thought of her mother in Boston, waiting for a letter that wouldn't come for weeks. Thought of the factory closed and dark. Thought of Mr. Ashworth's cold eyes in that photograph assessing her like merchandise. Then she thought of Isaac's blue eyes measuring her not for beauty or docility, but for capability. Thought of Anna's desperate hope quickly hidden. Thought of that ledger, chaotic and solvable a problem with a clear answer. Kate closed her eyes and pulled the quilt up to her chin. The bed was warm. The cabin was solid. The storm might rage outside, but here in this small circle of lamplight and human warmth, she was safe. For now, that was enough. She slept. Dawn came late to the Wyoming winter, the sun struggling through clouds that promised more snow. Kate woke to unfamiliar sounds. The creak of floorboards above her head, the clank of metal on metal, the low murmur of voices, one deep and male, one light and almost inaudible. She lay still for a moment, disoriented, before memory flooded back. The blizzard, Isaac, Anna, the cabin at the end of the world. She rose quickly, suddenly self-conscious about lying abed while others worked. The bedroom was cold, her breath visible in the gray morning light. She dressed in her work dress, the one she'd worn at the factory, dark gray wool, practical to the point of severity. Her fingers fumbled with the buttons still clumsy from yesterday's cold. When she emerged into the main room, she found Isaac at the stove and Anna setting the table. Isaac glanced up, nodded once. "Morning. Coffee's ready. Breakfast in 10 minutes." Kate crossed to the stove, poured coffee into the tin cup Anna had set out for her. The cabin was warm, the fire already built up to a healthy blaze. Through the window she could see the storm had passed, leaving behind a world transformed into white silence. Snow lay thick on everything, smooth and unmarked, except for a single trail of footprints leading to the barn. "You've already been out," Kate observed. "Horses need feeding, storm or no storm." Isaac cracked eggs into a skillet with one hand, his movements economical. "Anna, get the bread." The child moved to obey, and Kate watched the choreography of their morning routine. Father and daughter working together with the ease of long practice, communicating more through gesture than words. Anna knew where everything was kept, anticipated what was needed before being asked. Isaac cooked with the same calm competence he brought to everything else, no wasted motion, no hesitation. Kate felt suddenly acutely useless. Breakfast was eggs fried, salt pork bread, toasted on the stovetop, and more of that strong black coffee. They ate in silence again, though this morning it felt less heavy. Anna kept stealing glances at Kate when she thought Kate wasn't looking quick, darting looks full of curiosity. When the meal was finished and the dishes cleared, Isaac pushed back from the table. "All right, let's see where we stand. Anna, show Miss Morrison where everything is kept. Start with the kitchen." For the next 2 hours, Kate received an education in frontier housekeeping that made her head spin. The kitchen, which had seemed simple last night, revealed itself to be a precisely organized system. Dry goods in sealed tins to keep out mice. Root vegetables in a cellar accessed through a trapdoor in the floor where the earth kept them from freezing. Preserved foods in jars on shelves built into the wall, salt pork and smoked venison hanging from hooks in the rafters. Everything had its place, and Anna knew that place with absolute certainty. The child led Kate through the cabin like a tiny general pointing to storage areas, demonstrating how the stove worked, showing her where kindling was kept and how much to use. She didn't speak, but her gestures were clear enough. This is the broom. This is where it goes. This is how Papa likes things done. Kate tried to absorb it all, but the sheer volume of information was overwhelming. How did you know when bread dough had risen enough? What temperature should the oven be for baking? How much water for washing versus rinsing? Every task that seemed simple revealed itself to be layered with technique and knowledge she didn't possess. By mid-morning, Kate's head ached, and her confidence, never robust to begin with, had shrunk to almost nothing. She stood in the middle of the cabin, surrounded by the evidence of domestic competence. She lacked and fought the urge to sit down and cry. Isaac, who had been working at the table with leather tack that needed mending, looked up. He studied her for a long moment, those blue eyes seeing more than Kate wanted to reveal. "Sit down," he said. "You look like you're about to fall over." Kate sat grateful for the permission. Anna hovered nearby, uncertain, her small face worried. Isaac set aside his work. "This isn't going to work if you make yourself sick trying to learn everything in one day. We'll take it slow, one thing at a time." "I don't have much time," Kate said. 2 weeks, you said. 2 weeks to see if we suit. Not 2 weeks to become a frontier wife." Isaac stood crossed to the shelf where he'd gotten the ledger last night and pulled down a slim book. Margaret's recipe book. She wrote down everything she knew about cooking, preserving, household management. Anna and I have been muddling through with it since she passed, but neither of us can read her handwriting very well. Maybe you'll have better luck. He handed Kate the book, and she opened it carefully. The pages were covered in a feminine hand, flowing and elegant, with little sketches in the margins. Recipes, yes, but also notes. Isaac likes his coffee strong. Anna won't eat carrots unless they're in stew. Remember to air the quilts on sunny days. The notations of a woman building a life, planning for a future she wouldn't live to see. Kate's throat tightened. She was very organized. She was a wonder. Isaac's voice was flat, carefully empty of emotion. Smart, capable, could do anything she set her mind to. She'd have laughed herself sick seeing me try to manage a household. How did she die? The question was out before Kate could stop it, too blunt, too personal. Isaac was silent for so long that Kate thought he wouldn't answer. Then he said, "Childbirth, Anna's birth. We were snowed in, couldn't get to town for the doctor. She bled, and I couldn't stop it. By the time the thaw came, it was too late." Kate looked at Anna, who had gone very still, her dark eyes fixed on her father's face. The child's small hands were clenched into fists at her sides. "I'm sorry," Kate said quietly. "That must have been terrible for both of you." "It was 8 years ago." Isaac picked up his leather work again, his hands moving with deliberate steadiness. "We manage." But managing, Kate thought, wasn't the same as thriving. She looked around the cabin again with new understanding. The obsessive cleanliness, the rigid routine, the careful organization, these weren't signs of competence. They were evidence of two people holding themselves together through sheer force of will, keeping chaos at bay through control of their immediate environment. And Anna's silence suddenly made terrible sense. What did you say when your mother died, bringing you into the world? How did you speak when every word might carry the weight of that guilt? Kate closed Margaret's recipe book gently, as though it were something sacred. "Thank you for showing me this. I'll study it carefully." Isaac nodded already, focused on his mending. Anna watched Kate for another moment, then slipped away to the corner where she kept her things, returning with a slate and a piece of chalk. She sat at the table and began drawing, her small tongue poking out between her lips in concentration. Kate opened the recipe book to the first page and began to read. By afternoon, she'd made her first attempt at cooking. Biscuits, because the recipe seemed simple enough. Flour, large salt, baking powder, milk. Mix, knead, briefly, cut, bake. Margaret's handwriting included helpful notes about texture and timing. Dough should be soft but not sticky. Handle as little as possible. Oven hot enough that you can hold your hand inside for only 5 seconds. Kate measured carefully, her factory-trained precision serving her well. She mixed the ingredients, trying to judge the right consistency. The dough felt strange under her hands, foreign and unpredictable. Nothing like the clean certainty of numbers in a ledger. Anna appeared at her elbow watching. Kate glanced at her. "Am I doing this right?" The child studied the dough, then reached out and poked it with one small finger. She shook her head. "Too wet," a nod. Kate added more flour, kneaded it in. Anna watched, her expression serious. When the consistency satisfied her, she nodded again and stepped back. The biscuits went into the oven and Kate waited, anxiety churning in her stomach. Through the window she could see Isaac outside splitting wood with powerful, rhythmic strokes. The axe rose and fell with mechanical precision, each blow splitting logs cleanly. He'd been out there for an hour, working steadily despite the cold. The smell of baking filled the cabin. Kate checked the biscuits obsessively, terrified of burning them. When she finally pulled them from the oven, they were pale gold, slightly lopsided but recognizably edible. Anna came to inspect, sniffed delicately, then picked one up and bit into it. She chewed thoughtfully, her expression unreadable. Then she took another bite. Kate held her breath. Anna looked up at her and smiled. It was a small smile, tentative and fleeting, but it transformed her solemn little face into something almost joyful. Relief flooded through Kate so powerfully that her knees went weak. "They're all right." Anna nodded vigorously, still smiling, and took her biscuit to the table to continue eating. When Isaac came in 20 minutes later, stamping snow from his boots, Kate offered him a biscuit with trembling hands. He took it, bit chewed. His expression didn't change. "Need salt?" he said finally. "But the texture's good. You'll get the hang of it." It was hardly effusive praise, but Kate felt absurdly pleased anyway. She'd made something edible. It was a start. The days developed a rhythm. Kate woke early before dawn and helped Anna with breakfast, while Isaac saw to the animals. They ate together, then Isaac would give Kate instructions for the day's tasks while he worked on ranch maintenance. Anna became Kate's silent tutor, demonstrating through gesture and example how things should be done. Kate learned to build a fire that would burn steadily for hours without smoking. She learned to make bread that didn't emerge from the oven as dense as brick. She learned which chickens were reliable layers and which were destined for the pot. She learned to mend clothes with stitches that didn't pucker the fabric. She failed constantly. Burned meals, oversalted stew bread that rose too much or not enough. Shirts she sewed buttons onto crooked. Water she pumped that froze in the bucket before she could get it inside. Each failure made her want to scream with frustration, but Isaac's response was always the same calm assessment. "Try again. You'll figure it out." In the evenings after supper and dishes, they sat at the table, and Kate worked on Isaac's accounts. This at least was work she understood. The chaos of the ledger submitted to her practiced hand, transforming into orderly columns that told a story she could read. Isaac was not, as he'd claimed, terrible at bookkeeping. He simply had no training and no natural inclination for it. His entries were honest but disorganized income and expenses jumbled together with no system. Kate separated them, created proper categories, calculated running totals. The picture that emerged was troubling. "You're being systematically overcharged," Kate said on the fourth evening, pointing to her calculations. "Not just the feed grain I noticed before. Look at this. The blacksmith in town charges you 15% more than he charges other ranchers. I can tell because you've got duplicate receipts here where someone else paid for shoeing and you paid for horseshoes. Same smith, different prices." Isaac leaned over her shoulder to study the figures. He was close enough that Kate could smell wood smoke and leather, the scents that seemed to cling to him permanently. "How can you tell?" "The handwriting on the receipts. See, same flourish on the capital S in Smith. Same way he crosses his sevens, but your invoice says $3 for 4 shoes. This other invoice, which isn't in your name, says $2.60 for the same service." "Son of a bitch." Isaac's voice was quiet, almost conversational, but there was steel underneath. "Who's the other invoice?" Kate checked. "Looks like Dr. Webb, the physician in town. Tom Webb, good man." Isaac straightened his jaw tight. "I'll have words with the blacksmith next time I'm in Copper Ridge." "There's more," Kate said. She flipped back through pages, showing him the pattern she'd uncovered. The general store, the feed supplier, the lumber yard. Everyone in town is charging you premium prices. Not by much. Just enough that you wouldn't notice unless you were comparing receipts. Adds up to maybe $10 or $12 a month. Isaac was silent for a long moment, staring at the numbers. His hands rested on the table, those scarred, capable hands, and Kate saw them curl slowly into fists. "It's because of Margaret," he said finally. "After she died, people tried to help, brought food, offered to take Anna for days at a time, gave me advice I didn't ask for. I told them I could manage on my own. Guess some folks took offense. So they punish you by overcharging for necessities." Kate couldn't keep the outrage from her voice. "That's despicable. That's a small town." Isaac's tone was bitter. "You're only welcome as long as you play by their rules. I didn't want to be the grieving widower everyone pitied, didn't want Anna growing up thinking she was some kind of tragic orphan. So I kept to myself, did my work, raised my daughter, and Copper Ridge decided I was uppity." Kate thought of Boston, of the factory workers who would share their last crust of bread with a neighbor in need of the community that had formed in poverty and hardship. She thought of how her mother's friends had quietly left food on their doorstep after her father's death, never asking for thanks or acknowledgement. "Not everyone is like that," she said. "Dr. Webb isn't overcharging you. Tom's different. Lost his wife young, too. He understands." Isaac pulled out the chair next to Kate and sat heavily. "Look, I appreciate you sorting this out, but there's not much I can do about it. Copper Ridge is the only town within 2 days' ride. I need those merchants even if they are bleeding me dry." Kate tapped her pencil against the ledger, thinking, what if you didn't need them? What if you bought direct from suppliers in Cheyenne or Laramie? Takes a week to get there and back. Can't leave the ranch that long, especially in winter. What about the other ranchers, the ones who aren't being overcharged? If you pooled resources, bought in bulk, shared shipping costs. Isaac looked at her sharply. "You mean a cooperative. I mean practical economics. 5 ranchers ordering together have leverage. They can negotiate better prices, split transportation, buy in quantities that make direct purchase worthwhile." Kate was warming to the idea now, her mind already working through the logistics. "You'd need someone to organize it, keep track of orders, manage accounts, coordinate deliveries. Someone like you. Someone who understands bookkeeping, yes." Isaac studied her, his blue eyes thoughtful. "You've been here less than a week, and you're already trying to reorganize the entire county's economy." Kate flushed. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to overstep. I just thought—" "No, don't apologize." A hint of something that might have been amusement crossed Isaac's face. "It's a good idea. Smart. The kind of thing Margaret would have thought of. She was always 5 steps ahead of everyone else." The comparison to his dead wife should have felt uncomfortable, but somehow it didn't. Kate sensed that for Isaac it was the highest compliment he knew how to give. "Would the other ranchers trust an outsider?" Kate asked. "I'm just some mail-order bride from Boston. You're my wife, or will be when we marry." Isaac said it matter-of-factly, but Kate's heart gave an odd little skip at the words. "That'll be good enough for most, and Tom Webb will vouch for you. He's respected. If he says you're honest, people will listen." They sat in silence for a moment, the only sound the crackle of the fire and the scratch of Anna's chalk on her slate in the corner. Kate looked at the ledger in front of her, at the neat columns she'd created from chaos, and felt something unfamiliar stirring in her chest. Purpose. The sense that what she was doing mattered, that her skills had value beyond the factory floor. "I'll make it work," she said quietly. "If you want me to try, I want you to try." Isaac stood stretched. "But first you need to learn to cook something besides biscuits. Tomorrow we're making stew." The next morning brought more snow-fat flakes drifting down with lazy menace. Isaac stood at the window watching the sky with a rancher's instinct for weather. "Going to be a bad one," he said. "Could last 2 or 3 days. We'll need to lay in extra wood and make sure the animals have enough feed to wait it out." He turned to Kate. "You think you can manage the house alone for a few hours? I need to check the herd in the north pasture, make sure they're not caught out in the open when this hits hard. Anna can help you." Kate's stomach clenched with nerves, but she nodded. "We'll be fine." Isaac gave her a long look, then nodded once and began bundling into his heavy coat. "Keep the fire going. If you need more wood, it's stacked on the porch. Don't go outside unless you have to. If I'm not back by dark, don't worry. Might have to shelter in the line shack if the storm gets too thick." Then he was gone, the door closing behind him, leaving Kate alone with Anna and the growing weight of responsibility. For an hour everything went smoothly. Kate and Anna worked together to prepare bread dough, following Margaret's recipe with careful attention. Anna showed Kate how to judge when the dough had been kneaded enough, her small hands demonstrating the proper folding technique. They set the dough to rise near the warmth of the stove covered with a clean cloth. Then Kate heard it, a sound from outside, thin and desperate, a cry, almost human. Anna heard it too. She went very still, her eyes wide. The sound came again, louder, not quite a scream, but close. Kate crossed to the window, peered out through the thickening snow. At first she saw nothing. Then movement caught her eye, something small and dark struggling in the snow near the barn. "Stay here," Kate told Anna, already reaching for her coat. The child grabbed her arm, shaking her head frantically. Her mouth opened as though to speak, but no sound came out. "Something's hurt," Kate said. "I have to help." Anna's grip tightened her small face, desperate, with some emotion Kate couldn't read. But Kate pulled free gently and stepped out into the storm. The cold hit her like a wall, stealing her breath. The snow was already ankle-deep and falling faster. Kate struggled toward the barn, her skirts dragging her hands already numb despite her gloves. The dark shape resolved into a calf newborn, or nearly so, struggling to stand on legs that wouldn't support it. It was covered in snow, shivering violently. Nearby, a cow lowed anxiously, trying to reach her baby, but held back by the fence line. Kate had no idea what to do. The calf was too heavy to carry. It needed shelter warmth, but the barn was 20 feet away, and Kate could barely walk through the deepening snow herself. She heard the cabin door slam and turned to see Anna running toward her coat, flapping open, carrying an armload of blankets. "Anna, no, go back inside." But the child didn't stop. She reached Kate, thrust the blankets at her, then grabbed one edge herself. Together, working with frantic speed, they wrapped the calf in the blankets and began dragging it toward the barn. It was exhausting work. The calf thrashed weakly, the blankets kept slipping, and the snow seemed determined to bury them all. They made it to the barn door, wrestled it open, and pulled the calf inside. The interior was dark and cold, but at least protected from the wind. Kate grabbed hay from a nearby bale, rubbing the calf's body vigorously to warm it and dry the birth fluids that were freezing in the cold. Anna ran back to the cabin, returning with more blankets and, bless her quick thinking, a jug of warm water from the stove. They worked together, Kate following instincts she didn't know she had, warming the calf, getting it dried and wrapped. The calf stopped shivering after 10 minutes. After 20, it struggled to its feet, bleating for its mother. Kate and Anna stood back, breathing hard, covered in hay and snow, and worse. They looked at each other, and Anna started to giggle. It was a rusty sound, as though the mechanism for laughter needed oiling, but it was genuine. Kate found herself laughing, too giddy with relief and the absurdity of their appearance. "We did it," Kate said, still laughing. "We actually did it." Anna nodded, her smile huge. Then she did something that shocked Kate into stillness. She spoke. "Mama would be proud." The words were barely above a whisper, rough from disuse but clear. Kate's eyes filled with tears. She pulled Anna into a fierce hug, and the child didn't resist, just wrapped her small arms around Kate's waist and held on. They stayed that way for a long moment, two unlikely people finding comfort in each other, while outside the storm raged and a newborn calf bleated for its mother. And somewhere in the white wilderness, Isaac worked to save his herd, unaware that in his absence something fragile and precious had just taken root in his home. When they finally returned to the cabin, snow-covered and exhausted, they found the bread had risen perfectly. Kate shaped it into loaves with Anna's help, their hands working together now, with the beginning of real coordination. The bread went into the oven, and Kate started the stew Isaac had promised to teach her, following Margaret's recipe, while Anna pointed out adjustments. The storm intensified through the afternoon wind, howling around the cabin with a voice that sounded almost alive. Kate kept the fire built high, kept checking the window for any sign of Isaac. As the light began to fail and he still hadn't returned, anxiety began to gnaw at her confidence. "Your father said he might have to shelter in a line shack," Kate told Anna, as much to reassure herself as the child. "He'll be safe there. He knows this land. Anna nodded, but Kate saw worry in those dark eyes. The child stayed close to the window, watching, waiting. They ate dinner alone, the fresh bread and stew that Kate had made mostly by herself, and it was good. Not perfect, but good enough. Anna ate 2 bowls, which Kate took as high praise. After dinner, with the storm still raging and darkness complete, Anna brought her slate to the table where Kate was once again working on the ledgers. The child sat quietly for a moment, then began to draw. Kate watched from the corner of her eye, curious. Anna drew with quick, confident strokes. A cabin. 2 figures inside, one tall, one small, outside a third figure, battling through, snow axe in hand. She studied her drawing, then added something else. A 4th figure, smaller than the others, standing in the cabin doorway, waiting. She pushed the slate toward Kate. Kate looked at the drawing, understanding flooding through her. The 4 figures were Anna's family, Isaac, Margaret, Anna herself, and now the 4th figure, Kate. "Is this your family?" Kate asked gently. Anna nodded. She picked up the chalk again and carefully wrote letters beneath the 4th figure. K-A-T-E. Kate's breath caught. "Thank you," she managed. "Thank you for making room for me." Anna leaned against her, a gesture of trust and affection, and Kate wrapped her arm around the small shoulders. They sat that way for a long time, listening to the storm and waiting for Isaac to come home. He arrived near midnight, snow-covered and half-frozen, stomping into the cabin with ice in his beard and exhaustion in every line of his body. Kate had stayed awake, keeping the fire-high coffee hot. She jumped up when the door opened, relief flooding through her. "Are you all right?" "We were worried." Isaac pulled off his gloves, flexed his hands to restore circulation. "Herd's safe. Got them into the canyon where there's shelter." He looked around the cabin, his gaze taking in the clean dishes, the fresh bread on the counter, Anna asleep in the rocking chair, wrapped in a quilt. "You managed." "We did more than manage." Kate poured coffee, handed it to him. "A calf was born during the storm. We got it into the barn, warmed it up. Mother and baby are both fine." Isaac's eyebrows rose. "You handled a birthing." "Anna helped. She knew what to do." Kate paused. "And Isaac," she spoke, just a few words, but she spoke. Isaac went very still, the coffee cup frozen halfway to his lips. What did she say? She said, "Mama would be proud." For a long moment, Isaac didn't move. Then he set down the coffee, walked to where Anna slept, and knelt beside the chair. He brushed hair from his daughter's face with infinite gentleness, his work-worn hands trembling slightly. 8 years, he whispered. 8 years of silence. Kate stayed where she was, giving him privacy for this moment. She watched him gather Anna in his arms, watched the child wake and wrap her arms around his neck without fear or hesitation. Watched as Isaac buried his face in his daughter's hair and his shoulders shook with silent sobs. When he finally composed himself and carried Anna to the loft, Kate busied herself banking the fire for the night, giving him time to settle his daughter and himself. When he came back down, his eyes were red, but his expression was calm. "Thank you," he said simply. "I didn't do anything." Anna chose to speak. "You gave her a reason to." Isaac poured himself more coffee, stood by the fire. "Margaret's death, it broke something in her. Broke something in both of us, maybe. We just stopped talking about things that mattered. I thought I was protecting her by not mentioning her mother. Thought it would hurt less if we just moved forward. But I was wrong." Kate joined him by the fire, careful to maintain a respectful distance. "Grief doesn't work on a schedule. You can't force it or ignore it. It just is. You sound like you know something about it." "My father died when I was 22. Killed himself after his business failed. I found him." Kate stared into the flames, remembering. "For a year, I couldn't talk about him. Couldn't even say his name. Everyone wanted me to move on, to forgive him, to understand. But I wasn't ready. When I finally was ready, I talked to my mother for 8 hours straight. Told her everything I'd been holding inside." "What did she say?" "She listened. That's all I needed. Someone to listen without trying to fix it." Isaac nodded slowly. "I've been trying to fix everything. The ranch, the house, Anna. Trying to make it all right again through sheer force of will. But you can't fix grief, can you? You can only live with it. And eventually, if you're lucky, you find room for something else alongside it. They stood in companionable silence, the fire crackling between them, the storm beginning to ease outside. Kate was acutely aware of Isaac's presence, the solid reality of him. This man who wrote awkward letters, seeking a wife, who worked himself to exhaustion, keeping his ranch running, who loved his daughter enough to let a stranger into their carefully guarded life. "The 2 weeks are almost up," Isaac said finally. "I know we agreed to a trial period to see if this arrangement would work, but I think we both know the answer already." Kate's heart hammered. "Do we? You've learned more in 10 days than most women learn in months. You've helped Anna more than 4 years of silence did. You've found ways to save this ranch money, and probably dignity too once word gets around that I'm not being played for a fool anymore." He turned to look at her directly. "And you've done it without complaint, without asking for anything in return, except honesty and a chance to prove yourself. I've burned more meals than I've cooked properly. You're learning. That's what matters." Isaac set down his coffee cup. "Kate, I want you to stay. Not as a trial, not as a business arrangement. I want you to marry me when the circuit preacher comes through in spring. Be Anna's mother if she'll have you. Be my partner in this ranch and this life." Kate's breath caught. "Isaac, I don't know if I can be what you need. I'm still learning to cook. I can't sew worth anything. I'm hopeless with chickens. I'm not Margaret." "I don't want you to be Margaret." Isaac's voice was firm. "Margaret was my wife, and I loved her, and she's gone. You're Kate, and you're here, and you're exactly what this family needs. Someone practical and honest and brave enough to drag a newborn calf through a blizzard because it needed saving. I had help. We all need help. That's the point." Isaac reached out, hesitated, then gently took her hand. His palm was rough, warm, alive with the evidence of hard work. "I'm not offering you romance or poetry. I'm offering you partnership, a home, a daughter who already loves you, work that matters, a life we build together, whatever that looks like." Kate looked down at their joined hands, his so much larger than hers, rough and calloused against her ink-stained fingers. She thought about Boston, about the factory floor and the narrow room she'd shared with her mother, about Mr. Ashworth's cold assessment and the future that would have been. Then she thought about Anna's smile when the biscuits came out right, about the satisfaction of seeing chaos transform into ordered ledgers, about the way this small cabin had begun to feel like something more than shelter. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I'll marry you." Isaac's hand tightened on hers just for a moment, then released. "Good. That settled then." But there was something in his eyes, a warmth that hadn't been there before, and when he smiled, it transformed his stern features into something approaching joy. They stood by the fire a while longer, not touching, but close enough to share warmth, and talked about practical things. When the preacher might come, what needed to be done before spring planting, how to approach the other ranchers about the cooperative purchasing idea. The conversation was mundane, focused on the work ahead, but underneath it ran a current of something else: connection, understanding, the beginning of something that might, with time and patience, grow into more than either of them had dared to hope for. When Kate finally retired to the bedroom, she found a small package wrapped in cloth on the pillow. Inside was a pair of work gloves, the leather soft and well-worn, sized for a woman's hands. Margaret's gloves, she realized, carefully preserved all these years. There was a note in Isaac's careful handwriting. "You'll need these for ranch work. She'd want you to have them." Kate slipped the gloves on. They fit perfectly. She sat on the edge of the bed wearing a dead woman's gloves and felt no jealousy or discomfort, just gratitude. Margaret had loved this man, this child, this life. She'd built something beautiful here in the wilderness, and now she was passing it forward through Isaac's hands to Kate's, a legacy of strength and capability and love. Kate slept that night with the gloves on the bedside table within reach, a tangible reminder that she was no longer alone, that she had family now, broken and healing and imperfect, but family nonetheless. The storm blew itself out by morning, leaving behind a world of white silence and clean beginnings. And in a small cabin at the edge of the Wyoming wilderness, 3 people woke to the first day of their new life together. Spring came to Wyoming with the patience of something long awaited. The snow retreated grudgingly, leaving behind mud and the first tentative shoots of green. The days lengthened. The air warmed enough that Kate could work outside without her fingers going numb within minutes. And with the thaw came the circuit preacher, Reverend Samuel Hart, riding into Copper Ridge on a bay mare that had seen better days. Isaac got the news from Tom Webb, who'd ridden out to the ranch specifically to deliver it. The doctor sat at the kitchen table accepting coffee from Kate with the easy familiarity of someone who'd become a regular visitor over the winter months. "Samuel's at the church," Tom said, warming his hands on the cup. "Planning to stay through Sunday, perform any weddings or baptisms that need doing. Thought you'd want to know." Isaac glanced at Kate, who was kneading bread dough at the counter. She'd gotten good at it over the winter, her movements now confident and efficient. "What do you think ready to make it official?" Kate's hands stilled in the dough. They'd lived as a family for 4 months now, she and Isaac and Anna. The question of marriage had hung between them, understood but unspoken, waiting for the practical reality of a preacher. Now that the moment had arrived, Kate felt her stomach flutter with nerves. "Saturday," she asked. "Saturday," Isaac confirmed. "Give us time to get into town, get you a decent dress if you want one." "I have a dress." "The gray wool you wore on the train." Isaac's tone was dry. "That's a factory dress, Kate. You're getting married, not punching a time clock." And Tom laughed. "He's got you there. My wife Sarah runs the dress shop in town. She'll fix you up proper." Kate turned to face them, flour dusting her hands. "I don't need anything fancy." "Maybe not," Isaac said. "But you deserve it anyway." The gentleness in his voice, the consideration, made Kate's chest ache. Over the winter, their partnership had deepened into something she didn't quite have words for. Not romance, not yet, but a foundation of respect and growing affection. They worked well together, Isaac and Kate. His physical strength complemented her organizational mind. His knowledge of ranching, paired with her facility with numbers, had turned the cooperative purchasing scheme into reality, much to the shock of Copper Ridge's merchants. 5 ranchers now bought supplies together, pooling orders and splitting shipping costs from Cheyenne. Kate managed the accounts, tracked deliveries, negotiated prices with a skill that had earned grudging respect even from those who'd initially dismissed her as some city woman playing at frontier life. The savings were substantial, 20 to 30% on most goods, which translated to real money in the pockets of families who lived on slim margins. It had also earned Kate enemies. The Copper Ridge merchants, who'd been overcharging for years, didn't appreciate having their scheme exposed and their profits cut. Mrs. Opal Henderson, owner of the general store, had been particularly vocal in her displeasure. "That Boston woman thinks she can waltz in here and tell us how to run our businesses," Henderson had complained loudly at the church social Kate had attended in March. "Disrupting relationships that go back 20 years, turning neighbors against each other over a few pennies." Kate had smiled politely and pointed out that those few pennies added up to over $200 a year across 5 families. Money that could buy seed for planting medicine for sick children or repairs to buildings that had been neglected too long. Henderson had sniffed and turned away, but Kate had noticed other women watching, listening, calculating what an extra $200 a year might mean to their own households. Now standing in her kitchen with flour on her hands and 2 men waiting for her answer about a wedding dress, Kate realized how far she'd come from that desperate woman who'd stepped off the train in December with 47 cents and no prospects. "All right," she said. "A dress, but nothing impractical. I need to be able to work in it after the wedding." Tom grinned. "I'll tell Sarah you're coming. She'll be thrilled. Hasn't had a wedding dress to make in 2 years. After Tom left, Kate returned to her bread and Isaac to his ledgers. They worked in comfortable silence, a pattern they'd established over the long winter. Anna sat near the window with her schoolwork McGuffey's reader open on her lap. She read aloud now, her voice still quiet but growing stronger with each passing week. The silence was broken by a knock at the door. Kate and Isaac exchanged glances. Visitors were rare this far from town. Isaac opened the door to reveal a woman Kate had never seen before. She was perhaps 35, handsome, rather than pretty, with auburn hair pinned severely back and eyes that assessed everything in one quick sweep. She wore a traveling suit of dark green wool, well made, but showing wear at the cuffs and hem. "Mr. Brennan," the woman's voice was educated Eastern. "I'm Eleanor Whitmore. I've come about the advertisement." Isaac's face went blank with confusion. What advertisement? For a housekeeper. The notice in the Denver newspaper published 3 weeks ago. It said to inquire at the Brennan Ranch, Copper Ridge, Wyoming. He read it, his expression darkening. Then he handed it to Kate. The advertisement was brief and to the point. Housekeeper wanted for widowed rancher with young daughter. Must be capable, clean, and willing to work hard. Inquire Isaac Brennan, Copper Ridge, Wyoming. Kate's hands clenched on the paper. You didn't place this. No. Isaac's voice was flat dangerous. I did not. Eleanor Whitmore looked between them, comprehension dawning. Oh dear, there's been a misunderstanding. There's been a deliberate act of sabotage, Kate said, her mind already working through the implications. Someone had placed this advertisement using Isaac's name, someone who wanted to embarrass him or disrupt their upcoming marriage, or both. When was this published? March 15th. I saw it and wrote immediately. The response came 2 weeks ago confirming the position was still available and asking me to come as soon as possible. I've been traveling for over a week to get here. What response? Isaac demanded. I never wrote to you. It had your name on it. Eleanor's voice had taken on a defensive edge. Mr. Isaac Brennan, Copper Ridge, Wyoming. I have the letter. She produced it, and Kate scanned the contents with mounting fury. The handwriting was crude, clearly disguised, but the content was specific enough to be convincing. The position paid $20 a month plus room and board. Duties included cooking, cleaning, and minding the child. References required but not essential for the right candidate. This is fraud, Kate said quietly. Someone impersonated you in writing Isaac. That's a crime. Anna had crept closer, her dark eyes wide. She tugged on Kate's sleeve, held up her slate. On it she'd written a single word in her careful child's hand. Who? That was the question. Who in Copper Ridge hated Isaac enough or resented Kate enough to go to this much trouble? The answer came to Kate with sickening certainty. Henderson. Isaac's jaw tightened. You sure? Who else benefits from disrupting our marriage? If you're unmarried and distracted by household chaos, you're less likely to keep organizing the cooperative. The merchants get their inflated prices back. Kate turned to Eleanor Whitmore, who was watching this exchange with growing alarm. I'm very sorry you've been brought here under false pretenses, Miss Whitmore. Obviously there is no position. Mr. Brennan is engaged to be married on Saturday. I'm his fiancée. Eleanor's face flushed. I see. And the person who wrote to me was not Mr. Brennan, was in fact someone trying to cause trouble. Kate's mind was racing ahead, calculating. Where are you staying? Do you have funds for the return journey? I spent most of what I had on the train fare here. Eleanor's voice was quiet, dignified despite her obvious embarrassment. I have enough for perhaps a week's lodging at the boarding house if there is one. Then I'll need to find work somewhere to earn passage back to Denver. Kate looked at Isaac. He was staring at Eleanor Whitmore with an expression Kate had learned to recognize. He was calculating, weighing options, coming to a decision that would probably be inconvenient and expensive and exactly right. You can stay here, Isaac said. Kate blinked. What? In the barn. We've got a tack room that's clean and dry. We can set up a cot. Isaac was already moving, his mind made up. You help with spring planting until after the wedding on Saturday. We'll pay you fair wages. Eleanor looked stunned. You'd do that? Even though I was brought here to cause trouble in your household, you were lied to, same as I was. That's not your fault. Isaac was already pulling on his coat. I'll get the tack room ready. Kate, can you spare some bedding? Kate wanted to protest. They were getting married in 3 days. The last thing they needed was a strange woman living in their barn, a constant reminder of someone's malicious intent. But she looked at Eleanor Whitmore's carefully maintained dignity, the way she held herself despite obvious humiliation, and recognized something of herself in this woman, someone who'd traveled far on hope and found betrayal instead. Of course, Kate said. Come, I'll show you where things are. You must be exhausted from traveling. Over the next hour they settled Eleanor into the tack room, which Isaac transformed with surprising speed into a tolerable sleeping space. It was small and smelled of leather and horse, but it was clean and private, with a small stove for heat. Eleanor accepted it all with quiet gratitude, her earlier mortification giving way to practical assessment of her situation. As Kate helped her unpack the single carpet bag that contained all her possessions, Eleanor said suddenly, You're not what I expected. What did you expect? Someone more territorial, more angry at my presence. Eleanor smoothed wrinkles from a spare dress. If I'd shown up at my previous employer's home and discovered she had a fiancé, I'd have been thrown out within the hour. Previous employer? Eleanor's hand stilled. I was housekeeper for a doctor in Denver, Dr. Marcus Whitmore, my husband. The word came out bitter. He died 6 months ago, leaving me with debts I didn't know about and a house I couldn't afford to keep. I sold everything, paid what I could, and started looking for work. A widow without family isn't worth much on the marriage market, but a capable housekeeper can at least earn her keep. Kate heard her own story echoed in Eleanor's words. Different details, same desperation. I'm sorry. Don't be. Marcus was charming and irresponsible in equal measure. I'm better off without him once I stop being angry at him for dying and leaving me in this mess. Eleanor managed a wry smile, but enough about my troubles. Tell me about this cooperative that stirred up such resentment. That takes nerve-challenging established merchants. So Kate told her about the overcharging she'd discovered, about the cooperative she'd organized, about the money saved, and the grudges earned. Eleanor listened with the sharp attention of someone trained to notice details, and when Kate finished, she was nodding thoughtfully. You've made an enemy of Mrs. Henderson. Several enemies, I think, but allies too. The ranchers' families who are saving money. They'll support you. Eleanor's eyes were shrewd. The question is whether Henderson will escalate. This advertisement scheme was clever, designed to embarrass rather than harm. But if it doesn't work, she might try something more direct. Kate hadn't considered that Henderson's malice might extend beyond social manipulation. What do you mean? I mean that people who've built their prosperity on dishonesty don't give it up easily. Watch your back, Mrs. Morrison, or soon-to-be Mrs. Brennan. The warning settled over Kate like a chill, but she pushed it aside. They had a wedding to prepare for and work to do. No time for paranoia. The next 2 days passed in a blur of activity. Kate rode into Copper Ridge with Isaac and Anna, ostensibly to visit Sarah Webb's dress shop, but actually to confront Opal Henderson. They found the merchant in her store presiding over her domain with the authority of someone who'd ruled it for 20 years. She looked up when Kate entered, her expression souring immediately. Mrs. Morrison, what can I do for you? You can explain why you placed a fraudulent advertisement in the Denver newspaper using my fiancé's name. Kate kept her voice level, conversational, but everyone in the store stopped to listen. Henderson's face went carefully blank. I'm sure I don't know what you're talking about. Really? Because a woman named Eleanor Whitmore arrived at our ranch yesterday with a letter confirming her employment as housekeeper, a position that doesn't exist, a letter written on stationery that looks remarkably similar to the stock you sell here in your store. Kate had spent the previous evening examining the letter by lamplight, noting the watermark, the weight of the paper. It was expensive stock, the kind Henderson kept behind her counter for customers writing important correspondence. Lots of people use that stationery, Henderson said, but her voice had lost some of its conviction. And lots of people have reason to disrupt my marriage. Kate stepped closer to the counter. Mrs. Henderson, I understand you're angry about the cooperative. You've lost business, lost the ability to overcharge families who can't afford it. But fraud is a crime. And if you persist in this harassment, I will involve the territorial marshal. The store had gone completely silent. Half a dozen customers watched with avid interest. Henderson's face flushed dark red, her hands clenching on the counter. You come into my town, into my store, and accuse me of criminal behavior. Her voice rose. You're nothing but a mail-order bride who got lucky. You don't belong here. You don't understand how things work. I understand that charging desperate families inflated prices because you can get away with it is theft, legal or not. Kate held her ground. And I understand that trying to sabotage my wedding because you're angry about losing that income is petty and cruel. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to stop. No more advertisements, no more letters, no more schemes. And in return, I won't press charges. You have no proof. I have the letter. I have the advertisement. I have witnesses who can testify about your grudge. Kate paused. But more than that, I have the respect of the families you've been cheating. How do you think they'll react when they learn you tried to destroy my marriage out of spite?" Henderson's mouth closed. Around them, the customers murmured. Kate saw calculation in the merchant's eyes, the weighing of options. Finally, Henderson's shoulders slumped fractionally. "Fine, no more interference." "Swear it." "I swear." The words came out bitten off, resentful but binding nonetheless. Kate nodded once and turned to leave. At the door, she paused. "One more thing, Mrs. Henderson. Eleanor Whitmore. The woman you lured here under false pretenses is staying with us for 2 weeks. We're paying her fairly for her work. When she leaves, she'll have enough money to start over somewhere honest. That's the difference between your way of doing business and mine." She walked out before Henderson could respond, her heart hammering but her spine straight. Isaac was waiting outside with Anna leaning against the hitching post. He straightened when he saw Kate's face. "How'd it go?" She backed down, reluctantly but definitely. "Good." Isaac's expression was grim. "Because Tom told me something interesting. Henderson's been trying to convince the other merchants to refuse to stock goods for the cooperative. Says we're destroying their livelihoods. Will it work? Not with Tom's support. He's well liked, and he's been telling everyone that the cooperative saved his family $150 this winter, but it means Henderson's still fighting us just through different channels." Kate sighed. "I knew this wouldn't be easy, but I didn't expect quite this much resistance." Anna tugged on Kate's sleeve, pointed to the dress shop across the street. Sarah Webb stood in the window waving. "Right," Kate said. "Wedding dress. Let's focus on something pleasant for a change." The dress shop was a cheerful space, fabric bolts lining the walls in rainbow profusion. Sarah Webb greeted them warmly, a plump, energetic woman in her 40s, with shrewd eyes and a ready smile. "Kate, I've been hoping you'd come by. Tom told me about the wedding." Sarah hugged her with genuine affection. They'd become friends over the winter, Sarah being one of the few women in Copper Ridge willing to look past Kate's Eastern origins and see the person beneath. "Now let's find you something beautiful." For the next hour, Kate was measured, draped, consulted, and gently bullied into choosing a dress far finer than anything she'd owned before. Deep blue silk, simple in cut, but elegant with delicate embroidery at the collar and cuffs. Sarah insisted on lending her a veil that had been her mother's fine lace yellowed slightly with age, but still beautiful. "You'll be lovely," Sarah declared. "Isaac won't know what hit him." Kate doubted that. Isaac had seen her covered in mud from dragging a calf through a blizzard, flour-dusted from failed baking attempts, and ink-stained from hours over ledgers. A fancy dress wasn't going to transform her into some vision of beauty. But the thought of walking toward him in something pretty, something that signaled this marriage was more than mere convenience, made her pulse quicken. Anna watched the fitting with huge eyes, reaching out occasionally to touch the silk with tentative fingers. Sarah noticed and winked. "Next time we'll make you a new dress, too, little one. Something pretty for spring." Anna beamed. They returned to the ranch as the sun was setting, the wagon loaded with the dress carefully wrapped in brown paper, along with supplies they'd purchased while in town. Eleanor had dinner waiting, a competent stew that filled the cabin with savory smells. "I hope you don't mind," Eleanor said as they entered. "I thought I should earn my keep." "Mind?" Isaac hung his coat on its peg. "Kate's been teaching me to cook for 4 months. Having someone else take a turn is a relief." They ate together, the 4 of them, conversation flowing more easily than Kate would have expected. Eleanor had a dry wit and sharp observations about human nature that made even Isaac laugh. Anna chattered between bites, her newfound voice still a wonder. After dinner, Eleanor excused herself to the barn, leaving the family alone. Anna was sent to the loft for bed, and Kate and Isaac settled into their evening routine, she with the ledgers, he with harness that needed mending. 3 days, Isaac said after a while, his hands still moving steadily with needle and leather. 3 days, Kate echoed, having second thoughts. Kate looked up, studied his face. Strong features carved by wind and work. Blue eyes that had softened over the months, losing some of their hard wariness. This man who'd saved her life, given her purpose, made room for her in his carefully ordered world. "No second thoughts," she said. "You, none." He set aside his mending, leaned back in his chair. "Kate, I want you to know something. This started as a practical arrangement. I needed help. You needed safety. But somewhere along the way, it became more than that. At least for me." Kate's heart beat faster. They'd carefully avoided this conversation all winter, both content to let their relationship develop without forcing definitions onto it. But with the wedding approaching, the question hung between them. What were they to each other, really? "For me, too," Kate said quietly. Isaac stood crossed to where she sat at the table. He held out his hand, and after a moment's hesitation, Kate took it. He drew her to her feet close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body, smell the leather and wood smoke scent that clung to him. "I'm not good with words," Isaac said. "Never have been. But I want you to know that when I look at you, I see the woman who saved my daughter from silence, who saved this ranch from bankruptcy, who walks into Henderson's store and faces down malice with nothing but truth and courage. I see my partner, my equal, the person I want beside me for whatever comes next." Kate's eyes burned with unshed tears. "Isaac, and I know that's not romance, not the kind you read about in books, but it's real, and it's what I have to offer. It's everything I want." Kate reached up, touched his face, rough with end-of-day stubble. "Romance is easy when life is easy. Partnership is what matters when things get hard, and I suspect things are going to stay hard for a while." Isaac turned his head slightly, pressed a kiss to her palm. The gesture was tender, intimate, and it sent heat spiraling through Kate's body. They stood that way for a long moment, close enough to kiss, but not quite closing that final distance. "After the wedding," Isaac said, his voice rough, "after it's official and proper, then I'd like to court you, Kate Morrison. Do this thing right." Kate smiled through her tears. "I'd like that." The wedding took place on Saturday afternoon in Copper Ridge's small church. The building was plain, whitewashed wood with simple benches and a cross above the altar, but sunlight streamed through the windows, and Sarah Webb had filled every available surface with early spring wildflowers. Kate dressed in the side room with Anna and Sarah helping, her hands trembling as she fastened the buttons of the blue silk dress. The fabric whispered against her skin, foreign and luxurious after months in practical work clothes. Sarah arranged the veil with practiced efficiency, stepping back to admire her work. "You look beautiful," Sarah declared. "Truly beautiful." Kate studied herself in the small mirror Sarah had brought. The woman looking back was a stranger, elegant in blue silk and lace. But underneath the finery, Kate recognized herself. The same practical Kate who could calculate compound interest in her head. The same stubborn Kate who'd walked into a blizzard rather than give up. The same hopeful Kate who'd answered a classified advertisement and found a life beyond anything she'd imagined. "Are you ready?" Sarah asked gently. Kate nodded, not trusting her voice. The church was packed. Tom Webb sat in the front row, smiling broadly. The other ranchers from the cooperative were there with their families, along with a surprising number of townspeople. Even Mrs. Henderson sat in the back, her expression neutral, but her presence a tacit acknowledgment of defeat. And at the altar Isaac waited. He wore a suit Kate had never seen before, black wool that must have been saved for special occasions, with a white shirt and string tie. His hair was neatly combed, his beard trimmed. He looked uncomfortable in the formal clothes, but steady, his gaze fixed on the door where Kate would appear. Reverend Hart took his place beside Isaac, prayer book in hand. The small congregation quieted, expectant. Sarah gave Kate's hand a squeeze. "Go get your husband." Kate walked down the aisle alone. No father to give her away, no family to witness this moment. But as she walked, she felt the support of the community around her. Tom Webb nodding encouragement. The ranchers' wives smiling. Anna sitting in the front row watching with shining eyes. And Isaac stepping forward to meet her, halfway offering his arm with such careful courtesy that Kate's throat closed with emotion. They walked the rest of the way together side by side and took their places before Reverend Hart. The ceremony was simple. Traditional vows spoken in steady voices. Isaac's hand was warm and solid when he took hers. His ring, which had been his mother's, slid onto her finger with surprising ease, as though it had been waiting for her all along. "I now pronounce you man and wife," Reverend Hart declared with satisfaction. "Isaac, you may kiss your bride." Isaac turned to Kate, his expression serious. He lifted the veil with gentle hands, revealing her face. For a moment they simply looked at each other, this man and woman who'd chosen partnership over passion, practicality, over romance, and found something more valuable than either. Then Isaac leaned down and kissed her. It was chaste, brief, appropriate for a church full of watching neighbors. But it was also a promise of more to come, of patience and discovery, of building something real in the time they'd have together. The congregation erupted in applause. Anna ran forward, throwing her arms around both of them, laughing with pure joy. And Kate, who'd spent so much of her life carefully controlling her emotions, let herself cry. Happy tears, grateful tears, tears that washed away the last vestiges of the desperate woman who'd stepped off that train in December. She was Kate Brennan now. Wife, mother, partner, home. The reception was held at the church social hall tables laden with food the community had brought. Kate found herself pulled from group to group, congratulated, questioned, accepted in a way she hadn't been before. The wedding ring on her finger changed things. She was no longer the mail-order bride, the outsider, the disruptive force. She was Isaac's wife, Anna's mother, a permanent part of Copper Ridge, whether Henderson liked it or not. Eleanor Whitmore approached mid-afternoon carrying a small wrapped package. "I know I'm barely more than a stranger, but I wanted to give you this. A wedding gift." Kate unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a leather-bound journal, the pages blank and waiting. On the first page, Eleanor had written in her careful hand, "For the stories you'll write together." "Thank you," Kate said, moved by the thoughtfulness. "This is perfect." "I leave Monday," Eleanor said. "I've been here just over 2 weeks as agreed. Isaac paid me fairly, more than fairly." She paused. "But I wanted you to know that these 2 weeks being part of your household, even temporarily, gave me something I'd lost. Hope that there are still honest people in the world. Thank you for that." They embraced briefly, two women who'd both learned that survival sometimes meant accepting help from unexpected sources. As the afternoon wore on and the celebration continued, Isaac found Kate standing near the window watching the sun paint the mountains gold. He came up behind her, slipped his arms around her waist, rested his chin on top of her head. It was the most openly affectionate gesture he'd made in public, and Kate leaned back against him, savoring it. "Tired?" he asked. "Overwhelmed? Happy? Nervous?" Kate turned in his arms to face him. "We're really married." "Seems that way. Reverend Hart was pretty clear about it. And now we go home and what resume life as though nothing's changed." Isaac's expression grew serious. "Everything's changed. You're my wife now, Kate. Not my housekeeper, not my business partner, though you're those things too, my wife. And tonight, when we get home and put Anna to bed, I'd like to start figuring out what that means for us." Heat flooded through Kate at the implication. They'd been scrupulously careful about boundaries over the winter, Kate sleeping in the bedroom, Isaac and Anna in the loft. But that was before. This was after. "I'd like that too," Kate said quietly. They left the reception as the sun was setting. Anna curled sleepily in the back of the wagon, clutching a rag doll one of the rancher's daughters had given her. The ride home was peaceful, the spring evening, mild, the mountains outlined against a sky turning from gold to purple. At the ranch, Isaac carried Anna to the loft, while Kate changed out of the blue silk dress and into her nightgown and wrapper. Her hands shook slightly as she unpinned her hair, letting it fall loose around her shoulders. She heard Isaac's footsteps on the loft ladder, the quiet sounds of him moving around below. When she emerged from the bedroom, she found him feeding the fire, building it up for the night. He'd removed his suit coat and tie, rolled up his shirt sleeves. He looked up when he heard her, and something flickered in his eyes. "Anna's asleep," he said, exhausted from all the excitement. Kate crossed to him, bare feet quiet on the wooden floor. "And us? Are we exhausted? Not even close." Isaac straightened, closed the distance between them. "Kate, I meant what I said about courting you properly. I don't want to rush anything. Don't want you to feel obligated because we're married now." Kate took his hands, scarred and strong, and placed them on her waist. "I don't feel obligated. I feel curious, nervous, hopeful, but not obligated." Isaac's hands tightened slightly, pulling her closer. "Curious about what?" "About this, about you, about what it's like to be wanted instead of needed." "Oh, you're needed. I need you, like I need air." Isaac's voice dropped lower. "But you're also wanted, Kate. Very much wanted." He kissed her, then not the chaste church kiss, but something deeper, more thorough. His mouth was warm and sure, coaxing a response from her that came naturally without thought. Kate's arms went around his neck, her fingers tangling in his hair, and the kiss went on until they were both breathless. When they finally broke apart, Isaac rested his forehead against hers. "Bedroom? Bedroom," Kate agreed. He lifted her effortlessly, carrying her the few steps to the bedroom door, kicking it shut behind them. The room was dark except for moonlight streaming through the window, painting everything in silver and shadow. Isaac set her down gently beside the bed, his hands framing her face. "Last chance to change your mind. Tell me to go sleep in the barn and I'll go. No questions, no grudges." Kate smiled. "Stay. Please stay." What happened next was tender and awkward and perfect. Two people learning each other, discovering what brought pleasure and what brought laughter. Isaac was patient, careful, his strength tempered by gentleness. Kate was nervous, but willing, her natural curiosity overcoming shyness. Afterward, they lay tangled together, the quilts pulled up against the chill, their breathing gradually slowing. Isaac's hand traced lazy patterns on Kate's arm, his touch possessive and tender at once. "I love you," he said quietly. "Should have said it before, but I'm saying it now. I love you, Kate." Kate turned in his arms, kissed him softly. "I love you too. I didn't expect to, didn't plan on it. But somewhere between the blizzard and the biscuits and the bookkeeping, I fell in love with you." They talked then late into the night about everything and nothing. Plans for the ranch, hopes for Anna's future, memories of people they'd lost, dreams they'd stopped letting themselves have until they found each other. Eventually they slept wrapped around each other, the marriage complete in every sense. Kate woke before dawn to find Isaac already up, standing at the window in his trousers and undershirt, staring out at the pre-dawn darkness. She slipped from the bed, pulled on her wrapper, and joined him. "What is it?" "Nothing. Everything." Isaac pulled her against his side, his arm around her shoulders. "Just watching the sun come up on the first day of our marriage. Seemed like something worth being awake for." They stood together in comfortable silence as the sky lightened from black to gray to pink. Outside, the ranch was waking up. Birds beginning their morning songs. The first golden rays touching the mountain peaks. "There's something I want to tell you," Isaac said. "Something I should have said before, but I was afraid it might change your mind about marrying me." Kate's stomach clenched. "What? This ranch, it's not as successful as I made it seem. We're getting by, but barely. The cooperative helps, but we're still one bad winter away from losing everything. I couldn't offer you security, Kate. Just work and hope, and the chance to build something together." Kate relaxed against him. "Is that all? Isn't that enough? Isaac, I came here with 47 cents and no prospects. You gave me a home, a family work that matters, and a partnership I value more than any amount of money. I never expected security. I expected to earn my keep and maybe, if I was lucky, find a place where I belonged." She turned to face him. "I found that. I found you and Anna and this life. The rest we'll figure out together." Isaac kissed her forehead. "Together. I like the sound of that." Above them, they heard Anna stirring in the loft, the sound of small feet on the ladder, their daughter awake and ready to start the day. "Mama Kate." Anna's voice, still tentative with newness, called down. "Papa, are you up?" "We're up, sweetheart," Kate called back. "Come down. We'll make breakfast together." Anna appeared, her hair mussed from sleep, still in her nightgown. She looked between Kate and Isaac standing together at the window and smiled with pure contentment. "Are you happy?" she asked simply. Kate looked at Isaac, at this man who'd saved her from a blizzard and given her everything she'd never known she wanted. Looked at Anna, this child who'd found her voice and called her Mama. Looked around the small cabin that had become home. "Yes," Kate said. "Yes, sweetheart. I'm very happy." And she was. Not because life was easy or the future certain, not because they had money or status or any of the things society said mattered, but because she had something more valuable. She had family. She had purpose. She had love freely given and gratefully received. She had come through the blizzard to find home. And now, watching the sun rise on her first full day as Kate Brennan, she understood what that meant. not a place, not security or comfort or ease. Home was standing in a small cabin with the man she loved and the daughter she'd claimed as her own, watching the light return to the world, ready to face whatever came next together. The future stretched before them, uncertain and challenging and full of possibility. There would be hard winters and harder decisions, setbacks and struggles and fights with merchants who resented change. But there would also be this, morning light and family, and the quiet satisfaction of work that mattered. Kate had answered a classified advertisement seeking a capable woman for marriage, expecting nothing more than survival. She'd found so much more. She'd found herself. And as Isaac pulled her close and Anna wrapped her arms around both their waists, Kate sent up a silent prayer of gratitude for blizzards that brought people together, for second chances, for the courage to walk into the unknown and find that the unknown had been waiting for her all along. She was home, finally completely, irrevocably home. 1 year after the wedding, on a spring morning, much like the one when Kate had first arrived, she stood in the doorway of the cabin and watched Isaac work the forge. Her hand rested on the gentle swell of her belly, 5 months along with their first child together. Anna, now 9, sat nearby with her schoolwork reading aloud to practice. Her voice was strong now, confident, the silence of grief finally broken. She looked up and caught Kate's eye, smiled the warm smile of a child who knew she was loved. "Mama Kate, when the baby comes, can I help take care of it?" "Of course, sweetheart. I'll need your help very much." Isaac looked up from his work, caught Kate's eye across the yard. The look that passed between them needed no words. This life they'd built, it was everything neither of them had dared to hope for. The baby, a son they named Thomas after Dr. Webb, arrived in January of 1887. Then came Grace 2 years later, and finally young Margaret in 1891, named for the woman whose recipe book still guided Kate's cooking, whose gloves Kate still wore for ranch work, whose memory they honored by living well. 10 years after that first blizzard, the Brennan Ranch had grown to 40 horses and employed 2 full-time hands. The cooperative purchasing scheme Kate had organized had expanded to include 12 ranches, saving families across the county thousands of dollars. Mrs. Henderson had eventually retired her store, sold to a younger couple who believed in fair dealing. Kate had started teaching basic bookkeeping and arithmetic to the ranchers' daughters every Saturday afternoon, her kitchen table transformed into a makeshift schoolroom. Some of those girls would grow up to manage their own ranches, to keep their own books, to understand that a woman's mind was as valuable as her hands. Anna married at 21 to a good man who farmed land adjacent to the Brennan spread. She gave Kate and Isaac 4 grandchildren who called the ranch home every summer, filling the expanded cabin with laughter and chaos. 25 years after Kate stepped off that train with 47 cents and no future, she and Isaac sat on the porch they'd added to the cabin, watching the sunset paint the mountains gold. Their children were grown scattered across Wyoming, but close enough to visit often. Their grandchildren played in the yard where Anna had once drawn silent pictures in the dirt. "Do you ever regret it?" Isaac asked, his hand finding hers, as it always did. Answering that advertisement, coming to this hard place, Kate looked at the life spread before her, the ranch prosperous and well-run, the family healthy and thriving, the community transformed in small ways by her presence, the man beside her whose steady love had been the foundation of everything good that followed. "Not for a single moment," she said. "Not even when I was freezing in that blizzard, certain I would die, because that blizzard brought me to you." Isaac died peacefully in his sleep at 78, Kate beside him as she'd been for 43 years. She lived 7 more years without him, time spent with children and grandchildren, time spent putting their story into the journal Eleanor Whitmore had given her so long ago. Kate Brennan died at 75 on a spring morning, the mountains visible through her window, her daughter's hand in hers. Her last words were simple. "Tell him I'm ready. Tell Isaac I'm coming home." They buried her beside Isaac on the hill overlooking the ranch under a headstone that read, "Catherine Morrison Brennan. She came through the blizzard and found home." The ranch stayed in the family for 3 more generations. The cabin, expanded over the years but still recognizable, was eventually preserved as a historical site. Visitors came to see where the legendary Kate Brennan had kept her books, had taught the first generation of educated ranchwomen, had built something lasting from nothing but courage and 47 cents. And in a display case in what had been the bedroom, they preserved 3 items Margaret's recipe book worn soft from use. The leather gloves Kate had worn for 40 years of ranch work, and the iron rose Isaac had forged for his proposal, each petal still perfect after a century, a symbol of love that endured beyond death, beyond time, beyond anything as simple as the blizzard that had brought 2 lonely people together. The story of the mail-order bride who saved a ranch and a family became legend in Copper Ridge. Mothers told it to daughters, teachers taught it in schools. And every winter when the blizzards came howling down from the mountains, someone would remember Kate Morrison stepping off that train and say, "That's the kind of storm that changes everything. That's the kind of cold that shows you what you're made of." Because some blizzards bring only death and destruction. But the one that brought Kate to Isaac's door brought life, brought hope, brought the beginning of something that would outlast them both. It brought home.